Good morning. My name is Shannon Prather, the marketing coordinator at GISinc. I'll be your moderator today. I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar titled The Future of GeoIoT, Why Where Matters, the series finale of a 5-part webinar series called GeoIoT, Why Where Matters. In today's webinar, we'll wrap up our series with a summary of what IoT is, working smarter with sensor technologies, asset tracking and analytics, indoor positioning systems, and then we'll move to examples of companies GISinc has partnered with to provide devices, software, and technology to help customers accomplish their IoT initiatives. We'll make sure you know the right questions to ask when getting your plan started, and we'll show you how our GeoIoT framework combined with Esri's ArcGIS Online and Operations Dashboard can help you streamline your real-time location services. Finally, we'll wrap up with market insights, research, and expectations in the future of GeoIoT. During the webinar, we'll pause for a moment to ask 2 polling questions to get a pulse on the audience's priorities. I would like to encourage you to post questions throughout the webinar. We'll respond to all questions at the end as time allows. After we answer questions and provide some closing statements, there will be a brief survey. The survey will show up on the screen after I have finished speaking. We realize you'll want to get back to your day at hand, but please do not hit the close button until you have seen the survey questions appear on your screen. Your time to answer these short survey questions is greatly appreciated. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted online. You'll receive a link to the recording via email. Before we begin, I'd like to take a minute to advertise our previously recorded episodes in the series. The first 4, what is GeoIoT, why does it matter, work smarter with sensor networks, GeoIoT asset tracking and analytics, and the indoor positioning systems and GeoIoT episodes have been previously recorded, and you can see them at the link, if you follow the link at the bottom of this slide. This link will also appear in the follow-up email you'll receive within a week with the recording of this current episode. And again, this current episode is the future of GeoIoT and why where matters. So let's talk a little bit about GISinc before we get started. GISinc has solved where problems geospatially for over 27 years. With 160 professionals and one core purpose to create insight through location technology, we help state and local and federal governments as well as commercial industries to improve operational efficiencies, increase citizen engagement, optimize investments in Esri's ArcGIS platform, and increase revenues. Over the past few years, we've paired that location geospatial GIS lens with IoT technology. Without further delay, I'm excited to welcome our presenter today, D. Garth Bilston, Business Development Manager at GISinc. Garth?
Thank you for the introduction, Shannon. Appreciate that. And thank you for everybody that's on the WebEx today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to tune in and listen to the last of this series of webinars. I'd also like to take a brief moment to thank Steve Mulberry, who had done the prior presentations for his phenomenal presentation aspects, the energy he brings to the program, and the fantastic presentations that he'd laid out. Be a tough act to follow. So with that, we'll get started here and move into the presentation. Future of GeoIoT. So the aspect of this is a culmination of the prior webinars. Get to the point of why GeoIoT matters, what the future looks like, and what things are on the radar, where we see the market going, how the location services that GISinc has been able to bring to the aspects of GeoIoT can really help organizations work smarter and with more efficiency. So to recap, in the prior aspects of the webinars, what is GeoIoT? Why does it matter? Working smarter with sensor networks, asset tracking and indoor positioning. In prior events, they bring together the sensor network, ability to track assets, people, and apply analytics to that. And now we're going into the future, the next steps. With that, I'd like to turn over for a polling question for Shannon. If you'd please kick that off, Shannon.
Sure, thanks, Garth. We're going to launch our first poll. All right, so the poll is, does your organization have any active IoT initiatives? Options are yes, not yet, and not applicable. So we're going to give just a few seconds to collect those responses. Right, looks like we have pretty good participation. I'm going to go ahead and close up this poll. Thank you for all that participated. We appreciate it. It's always nice to get a pulse of who's watching each episode. So I'll go ahead and close that and then show you the results. And out of this audience, 50% of you have active IoT initiatives, and that's great. You know, we asked a similar question to this in our first episode of the series, and we had a lot of not yets. It seems like we still have a good bit of not yets, but it's great to see that many of these organizations that are listening in today are already have some active IoT initiatives.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. That's great to hear that so many people that are tuning in are active with their IoT adventures and moving down the path. So fantastic information to have. Thank you. As a recap for prior or anybody that's tuning in new to the sessions, Internet of Things is the network of physical objects, devices, vehicles, buildings, and other items embedded with electronics, software, sensors, and a network connectivity that enables these objects to collect and exchange data. So anything that is tied to a sensor is really where we're looking in this. And sensors can be anything that are wearables, tags, VLC from a lighting aspect, your iWatch, Android Watch, your mobile phones, VR, and all the way through your vehicles onto the home aspects. When we look at that, GISinc has tied that with geography and the location of those sensors and pulling location data as well as the sensor output to combine everything for GeoIoT. So GeoIoT being the key component. 3 types of things that we consider as a sensor network. First is something that collects information and sends it, something that receives information and then acts on it, and last, things that do both. In the GISinc world, we work on things that do both, which a sensor that can both collect and receive data ends up being a smart sensor, and it equals data-driven actionable items. So the key is getting back to a work smarter environment where a sensor that can both detect something and provide that information drives it back to an ability to act in a responsive manner to whatever the signal is that that sensor is kicking out. When we look at sensor networks, we start with a work smarter integration. We're going to start with the appropriate sensor for the task at hand. We're going to integrate that sensor. That sensor is going to be hooked up to a communication method. Might be a modem, might be or something else through a gateway or a hub. And then in most cases, we run this into an ArcGIS platform, which is then going into a visualization and monitoring mode so that the operator of the system can then utilize this information for appropriate monitoring of sensor data, making sure that all parameters are within standard operating tolerances, making sure that everything is working as appropriately. But we can also bring that into an asset management system, and the asset management system then can track the health of the assets, the location of the assets, and thus allow the operators to make more efficient decisions about location, quantity, and utilization of resources throughout an operation. And then we can go on to the next level of ingestion of that information and use it to automate dispatch, which that's the entire aspect of bringing in the work smarter component. Work smarter being if once we know that things are automated because that sensor told us the appropriate information, we can now automate all aspects of the business that are critical to that sensor and to the network that we put in place. So things that bring examples to this workflow are stream gauge monitoring, rainfall monitoring, citizen engagements, trash container capacity, catch basin cleaning. Think about all these things from a city perspective and around a municipality. If we have stream gauge monitoring via electronics, we don't have to send a crew out, put them out in harm's way during a storm. The stream gauge is automatically sensing the data, understands when the stream is approaching flood stage. We can now dispatch a crew to close the roadway at that point in time. And the citizens of that community stay safe. They're not going through a deep water environment. We're not unduly sending out a and helps route that dispatch crew to address the streams that are at the highest level of hitting their flood crest first, and then work backwards to the streams that are at a lower level if there are additional streams potentially be flooding. So a lot of ways to automate the system, make use of higher efficiencies, and keep people safer. So when we look at solutions and the work smarter integration aspects, we take that sensor then flows data into an ArcGIS platform that's giving our location, the layers, and parameters around what triggers need to be applied, and into that asset management system for ultimate configuration and output of the actionable intelligence. So the three components, that choosing the right sensor, incorporating that into an ArcGIS platform, and then on to a appropriate asset management for integration and outputs, is critical to the success of the sensor network. When we look at asset tracking as another avenue for GeoIoT, we look at what types of assets are we going to track. Things could be large vehicles all the way through pets, small objects on a retail shelf to where items in an inventory warehouse. So things that receive information, allow us to act on it, better routing of forklifts for pick, pack, and ship aspects, all the way through where are assets, where are people within a building from a production standpoint, and making sure that we're appropriately utilizing resources within the buildings. If we move on to indoor asset tracking examples, maybe we're looking at tracking people and the proximity of people, spatial aspects around that. We can look at, and this is a health center for indoor tracking, and looking at utilization of the space. We can see that we have 65 patients in the last 24 hours. 23 of those are unique in the last 24 hours, 7 new. And we can also look at the map, which is on an Esri platform. This is giving us our concentration of where the people most frequently dwell over the course of time, and the blue dots indicating where they currently are at. This can also be applied for guests, employees, devices emitting a Wi-Fi signal, Bluetooth signal, etc., and tagged assets as well. So if we need to know where a defibrillator happens to be, where a EKG machine happens to be in a health facility, those things can be tracked and automate on the location to help improve the efficiencies of the staff at the clinic. So when we look at the aspects of indoor positioning and why does indoors actually matter? So moving from the outdoor stream gauges, sensor technology, moving indoors, the indoor component is very intriguing because an interesting statistic that we found was that most of us spend 87% of our lives indoors. So if we can take that 87% of the time that we're spent in an office building, in our home, in our vehicle, and actually the vehicle is another 6%, so moving this entire time spent indoors to 93%. Utilizing and better understanding that data that we've created in a utilization fashion to help improve our efficiencies while indoors, to help improve the efficiency of the space that we're using, and any of those aspects can help improve our lives when we're spending 87% of it inside. Not a facility, for example, that utilization of the space in the waiting room, how can we make improvements in efficiencies to make it more inviting, more welcoming, so that people aren't huddled up, they aren't passing each other. If it's coming into flu season, if we've got a lot of people with flu, how can we get people to disperse a little bit versus having a congested path? Better understanding what our indoor positioning is, our spatial utilization, really comes to fruition in the indoor space. So looking at that, IPS or indoor positioning systems is a way to locate people inside of a building as well as objects. And bringing that in, we can do that through a multitude of different sensor networks. So we can utilize anything from a light, from a radio, a magnetic sensor, magnetic field, UWB, acoustics, infrared sonar, and there's a host of others that are not listed. The key thing that we want to really emphasize is that we're looking at this from a aspect of how do we utilize the appropriate sensor network at the appropriate time for that space and ensure that we are making the solution open in architecture so that we can add sensors as appropriate to bring our sensor network and our IoT system to the next level. Very important to avoid point solutions where we can't expand. So in our discovery, bringing in that sensor network to understand where things are at into a ArcGIS platform and then onto a open structure really allows the integration of any sensor that is appropriate for the task. So really how we find sensors and how things work, we start with finding the right sensor for the appropriate job. That sensor can be or even a camera. And those cameras and other sensor networks are all fed by some means of communications through VLC, visual light communication, Bluetooth, RFID, Wi-Fi. All these may be readily available in your environment. Some may need to be new and ingested appropriately. But that then comes to our ultimate mapping platform to understand the what, the where. And with the where, we can look at our mapping, analytics, navigation, monitoring, and processing. So understanding that sensor all the way through the mapping platform and applying that geo aspect to it for the location. Coming in through GeoEvent as our data hub, all those things now become possible to better understand the movements, the patterns, and allow us to work smarter through the engagement of sensors all the way through a mapping platform. All this is brought together by several different means, one of which we use is the custom GISinc GeoIoT bridge, which is our aggregation engine for getting that sensor data through the communication means, through our bridge, which is a reader and a writer, into the mapping aspect. And looking at from a sorry, it looks like I'm losing microphone, but keep an eye on it, make sure everything stays. So GISinc has spent a ton of time over the last several years as we started the GeoIoT adventure, working with and finding appropriate partners for our GeoIoT ecosystem. And the partners are what provides that sensor, what provides the gateways, the network hubs, and all this is centric to Esri. We were working through the slides last night, and very interesting how Esri being the hub of this, that almost all the other partners we found have blue logos to some extent as well. So anyway, as we look through, BlueLoc is a organization that has a Bluetooth beacon and node system for asset tracking indoors. It could be assets, could be personnel. OSIsoft with their Pi solution for sensor data coming off of most any sensor network that may be placed, oil rigs, public utilities, etc. Pi system is very prevalent in those realms. Accure with their video controls, the ability for Dragonfly to track the asset location of vehicles all the way through their camera system that can identify and re-engage with people from a visual clothing standpoint, hats, color of shirt, etc. Track people from one camera to another, and then bring that information into our GISinc bridge and then onto an Esri platform. RF controls, having a phenomenal RFID solution, very accurate in 3 dimensions. Bluetooth, Blue Vision with another Bluetooth solution. Macello, which was recently acquired by Here for their mapping solution, can be utilized, and then have the Esri GeoEvent data placed over the top of it. Of course, our partner CityWorks, Regato with their gateways, and Verizon with their Sensity cameras. Acuity with the ability for Bluetooth as well as VLC lighting. Great solution there for sub-centimeter accuracy with the VLC components into a camera. So when we look at this, how does this all work and what's our real-time location system look like? If we start off on the left, this chart is very interesting. The GISinc GeoIoT platform, as well as any GeoIoT platform in the world has. You start off with an asset that you're trying to utilize. You've got a node and a gateway, some location engine, going through a bridge into your aggregator, and then ultimately onto a dashboard. And the dashboard being the most critical part for most any of us, because that's what we see, that's what we engage with, that's what we interact with, and that's how our data is really comes to life and actually becomes visible for us to interact and make decisions on. So what we're looking at is any of those assets that were from our partners on the left-hand side. That communication means through their nodes, gateways into the location engine, which is what gives us our XY coordinate. That data being then processed through the bridge and then put onto that aggregator for analytics as well as current location, and ultimately shown on, in some cases, an Esri operations dashboard, formerly in the GISinc spinal map component that can be customized, as well as Acuity for their Atrius Insights platform. So several different means of how that data can be shown, and there's a ton of others that are out there. Just comes to finding the most appropriate open solution, again, trying to avoid point solutions for your utilization component. And what we do typically when we start to go down the IoT adventure is we start with asking the right questions, which comes to, what are you going to be monitoring? What is the key component of this? Are you going to be monitoring people, fixed assets, mobile assets, location-based sensors? Once we know what you're going to monitor and what the intent is, now we bring in the next question, which is wayfinding and navigation required? Do we need that real time point A to point B, or help goods migrate from point A to point B? Next level of that is, what's our level of positional accuracy? What do we require in order to make the system work right? Does it just have to be, I'm in the room, I'm approximately there, or does it have to be spot on and down to 1 foot or greater in the accuracy level? Could be an environment where the asset is a forklift driving down pathways within a warehouse, and we want to make sure that it stays right on the midline of that and it's not varying and bouncing off either wall. Therefore, the location accuracy needs to be very precise. Where if it's me walking through a campus at a university and I'm walking through the open corridors or space in between buildings, location accuracy can be 20 to 25 feet, and it's perfectly acceptable. So really dialing into what is the location accuracy, how frequently do those location points need to be updated. Those are all very key components and part of the question to ensure that we're on the right track. That again, how frequently do you need your signal information, real time or something less? Very critical for a wayfinder navigation. I really need to know where I'm at right now in order to make sure I'm making the appropriate left or right turn. If we're trying to track a container that's moving down the highway, to find out if it's in a shipping yard or if it's actually made it out of the yard onto the highway. Maybe tracking every 10 minutes is perfectly acceptable. Or maybe it's just a UPS package or a FedEx package that's moving along. Knowing where that's at every hour might be perfectly acceptable. We can is perfectly acceptable for location. Might be farm equipment out on a farm somewhere, and we want to know, where did I leave that particular attachment for my tractor? Being able to go out on a several thousand acre farm and quickly find that, because we know the last known location, will really help expedite the workload versus hunting around trying to find that piece. Next is, what communication protocol can we use? Are we inside? Will Wi-Fi work? Will Bluetooth, VLC, video? Does it require cellular? Does it require satellite? What is necessary to make this work in the capacity that's required? And what is also available and can be financially supported from the infrastructure that we're trying to deploy? As we conclude this component, security. Is there a security requirement for this? If it's just where's my tractor attachment, security is probably not a huge issue. However, if it's patients moving around in a hospital, HIPAA could be very critical. Or in a federal environment, FedRAMP could be very key to the aspects of the overall solution. So knowing what our security requirements are and knowing that location from a timing perspective and the accuracy perspective are three very big components of what makes the solution work in the most appropriate means. Once we know the answers to all those questions, we can then work through the framework and come up with the right path. So if the asset that we're trying to track in this case is people, and we're going to use video cameras, AccuWare's video tracker might be the right solution. That data being brought into the GeoIoT bridge onto an Esri ArcGIS online and displayed in an Esri operation format. Count people in a space, therefore better understanding spatial utilization within a specific environment. So that ability to use a fairly inexpensive camera, being an IP camera deployed, video tracker, the algorithms are being crunched, and we're able to count the number of people, the spatial utilization, and make adjustments based on time of day or seasonal aspects by comparing that data that we've collected over the course of several months, years, or even day to day, and understanding that, hey, on a given environment, maybe a Tuesday is the most crowded day of the week, therefore staff appropriately and adjust the space so that it is more accommodating on Tuesdays. If, say, for example, cleaning the floors happens on Mondays, adjusting the furniture to better accommodate the seating of that increased capacity on a Tuesday might be a key element to just make the visit or the spatial utilization from the patrons of that facility more accommodating. So as we look into the future and look at what's next and what the future of GeoIoT happens to be, depending on who you look at from a research organization standpoint, there's no question that it is rapidly expanding. IoT is a booming market. The biggest question is just exactly how big is it going to be? Cisco, for example, is stating 50 billion devices by 2022. So really in less than 4 years, they're expecting to have 50 billion devices out there. This is, of course, on the high end, going all the way down to the low end of Gartner predicting 21 billion connected devices. Either way you look at that, that's 21 billion connected devices on the low side. The growth curve, wide area network appears to be the most prolific as well as the highest growth area. Short term, such as your watch, connecting to your phone, that is also growing very quickly. So that wide area IoT is really where we're at with their asset tracking, personnel movements, and better understanding the analytics with assets. That is the highest growth arena that all organizations are putting out. It's we look at this curve and understand as we're at 2018, approaching 2019 very quickly, this short term and short range is one of the largest numbers, but we're also seeing the high growth come in that environment of industry. One of the interesting use cases, building from the ground up, is the new Hudson Yard facility in New York City. The technology that's being used here, and thanking Business Insider for the article that was written about this a few weeks back, the site's using data sensors to capture traffic patterns, air quality, pedestrian flow, power demands, and then utilizing this data over the course of time to make corrective actions to improve efficiencies. It's starting at the ground floor, literally at the construction phase and deploying the appropriate sensors to track all of this data, and then over the course of time make it more efficient for all parties, as well as improve the quality of life through better air quality, for example. Installing fans to blow what could be carbon monoxide out during high traffic times of the day might improve the air quality and make it a when visitors demands. We know the power goes up at peak times on peak days, and being able to account for that, very critical. But the Hudson Yards program is very interesting to watch from a standpoint of this is brand new technology that is coming out now. They are installing IoT sensors day one. They're going into the foundational aspects of the development of the project, and they will be there throughout the life cycle of the whole project, through its occupancy and its day-to-day utilization. So very exciting to see how that comes to life and works over the life cycle of the entire project, and what data sets they're able to garnish and put to use once the project comes online as fully utilized. Some other market insights that we find very interesting. Smart cities are and this is from IoT Analytics, so I'll give them props for providing the quality data here. If we look at smart cities, the ingestion and ability to track utilization in smart cities is really one of the highest growth areas. Back to that storm drains, stream monitoring systems, those are all very key elements to working smarter, allowing the city, municipality, or building, for example, in a siloed environment, to be more efficient in how they utilize their space, utilize the infrastructure at hand, and make everything more efficient, last longer, improve the longevity, as those sensors alert us to things that are near-term problems and allow us to adjust and adapt to them based on the example, a water sensor in the basement of a building, helping alert us to the fact that there may be a water leak and water is now collecting in the basement. There may be flooding, therefore get a sub pump in and going. And we can address issues immediately before they become much larger, more costly issues to resolve or fix down the road. So looking through all the components here, very interesting one that we get down to number 10, smart retail. Retail is a very interesting segment, as understanding traffic patterns through a retail store is one of the biggest questions that retailers have. They understand and have a idea of how people move through the store on a daily basis and by the level of large numbers. However, understanding the people that are going to spend the most money, what pathway do they typically take through the store? Does it differ from those that are just coming in to get, in a grocer, for example, bread and milk? If you look at a much larger multiplex retailer, those that are coming in to buy a TV and large ticket items, do they walk in and go to the left when they enter a store, where most everybody else walks in and goes to the right? Better understanding those things can help adjust and more effectively enhance the shopping experience of the patrons coming into the store. So we go all the way through the aspects here of IoT integration and segments, looking at connected industry, connected buildings, connected cars. Getting into our cars now, the phone, Apple CarPlay, Android CarPlay, all very prevalent. Car that much more, just because of the connection between our personal devices and the automobile are becoming more prevalent. And then connected health being another very interesting component, where when we look at that connected health ability, that comes down to a wearable device monitoring a health condition of a patient that used to be hospital bound during their monitoring phases, to now that patient can be out moving around. They can go home and enjoy their home environment versus being isolated in the hospital. Just a huge quality of life improvement through the use of sensor technology, understanding the where, the when, and how frequently it's accepting data, and what data is critical and what data resides within the parameters, and when data comes and is received that is outside the parameters, what action is taken. That's that connection of the device to the real world, so that the doctor, the patient, and everybody that's important to that service layer understands that that patient, if the heart rate goes above 100 beats a minute, something needs to happen. And maybe it's just a simple phone call that says, yes, I went up a flight of stairs, everything's okay. Versus, nope, a heart patient that's being monitored, and yes, dispatch EMT services immediately. So a lot of things can be built in to improve the quality of our life through that ingestion of IoT data and monitoring the parameters within which it falls. So going more specifically into the smart city component of it, looking at traffic flow. Traffic flow tends to be one of the largest components of smart city IoT. How to improve traffic. Most traffic one that we can help improve people's life. If you were to cut 10 minutes out of your commute time because the IoT sensors throughout the city were better monitoring traffic, and this could make the adjustments to the lighting systems, and by that I mean stoplights, etc., to improve traffic flow to get people into and out of the cities more efficiently, everybody would be a little bit happier to have 10 minutes back in their day due to that reduced stress of traffic, improved traffic flow, just a better experience overall because things move more efficiently. That efficiency moves to lower utilization of utilities, better lighting. If we understand where traffic is going, where pedestrians are moving, we can adjust the lighting appropriately to ensure that areas are well lit in the evenings, and turn off lights in areas that are not occupied. And as well as environmental monitoring. It could be anything from air quality to ensuring people are safe from an air quality issue, as well as to stream gauges and back to the flood warnings and just keeping people safe through a public safety aspect. So the interesting component here, back several months back, the U.S. Department of Transportation issued a challenge to several different cities and asked them, geospatially, Internet of Things, what does this look like? And we want you to incorporate things you're seeing and how you would like to improve the utilization of GeoIoT or IoT components into your city to improve people's lives within your metro area. 44 of the cities that participated test the use connect to their destinations. Basically, how do we cut down the number of vehicles on the road by getting people to share ride services? If we can reduce the number of vehicles on the road, we can improve traffic and reduce commute times. Fantastic. 11 of the cities envisioned improving urban freight delivery by implementing smarter curb space management. So if it's easier to get into a city, park, and do your business and get out, fantastic. That makes everything easier through the utilization of smart meters, allowed better delivery. 17 of the cities proposed using instructive wireless charging stations. So how do I more efficiently utilize a battery operated car, electric car, and where can I charge it that's close to the stores that I'm going to, close to my workspace? How to move people better, 53, implementing short-range communications to connect vehicles to infrastructure and each other. So monitoring of bicycles, cars, etc., and flow of all components of traffic through the city. So very interesting as we move on. Oops. Sorry. missed one slide there. GeoIoT. Everybody has a different aspect of what GeoIoT means to them. And as 50% of the organization, or the people that have joined on, came up and determined that they have a IoT initiative. That could be anything from waste management. It's much more efficient to send out to full versus constantly checking empty ones. Smart trash bins are fantastic. They notify the teams and appropriate personnel when the bins are full, therefore dispatching the appropriate waste retrieval groups to come out. Traffic monitorizations, smart energy, water control, dead meters, understanding where breaks may have happened in the water system and quickly getting a crew out to fix that. Intelligent shopping, smart homes, air quality, if there's air stagnation and what's air quality like, helping people stay indoors or utilize masks to stay healthier, all the way through smart buildings that are more efficient with their utilization of electricity. Tons of different ways that we can utilize IoT that is a method that is appropriate for you, for your organization, to improve the speed and efficiency and effectively work smarter. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Shannon for another polling question.
Thanks, Garth. Let's go ahead and launch this. When does your organization plan to launch their IoT initiatives? Know that the beginning, a lot of you had already started. So it's good to know that, but it's also going to be good to know if it's something that you guys are planning to start in 2019, 2020, perhaps much later, or may not apply. And we'll give everyone just a second or two to submit those answers. We appreciate all that are participating today. All right, let's end the poll and I will launch those results. All right, so it looks like, we still have about the same number that have already started. We've got some that are planning for next year, but a good 21% are not thinking about starting 2019 or 2020. Interesting. Yes. Does that surprise you at all, Garth?
I'd expect a little higher early on, but it's good to know that people are looking at the initiatives and collecting data to ensure that they're on the right path. So yeah, with that, Shannon, thank you very much for the polling question.
Absolutely. And we'll move on to our Q&A session. We've gotten a few questions that were submitted, and I think we have plenty of time to get to the majority of them. So we'll start with the first one for you, Garth. What do you feel would be the easiest way using IoT to make my city more smart or more of a smart city?
Really, it comes, making my city more of a smart city is really anything that can improve efficiencies of the municipality. So whether it's understanding how much rain has fallen and allowing the grounds crews to close parks and say little league fields, football fields, etc. at the appropriate time, to more critical issues of understanding when streams are approaching flood stage or when catch basins are full and need to be evacuated so that it doesn't cause flooding. Anything of that nature where a sensor can be utilized to provide a result in such a way that it can more efficiently utilize the signal is, in my opinion, a savings in time, effort, energy, and an efficient way of utilizing IoT within a city confines. Depending on what part of the city you're with and what group, your perspective and scope of influence and what matters to you is going to change. The road crews knowing that traffic is high on certain roads and certain roads need to be closed for repair, for flooding, for any component, is obviously relevant to them, where the waste management team, knowing when garbage collection day happens to be, when those municipal garbage cans are full, and can dispatch a crew to most efficiently empty those bins, is what's critical. So instead of just randomly with purpose on a, not random, sorry, with purpose driving down the road, checking every trash can, to at the beginning of the day, design a pre-planned route that hits all the cans that we know are full, that's going to be a much more efficient utilization of time and keeps that truck in use doing necessary work versus the driver just randomly driving around. So maybe that truck can be utilized one day out of the week to clean out full trash receptacles and have the driver of that truck then reallocated to do other services to help improve the city's efficiencies for the other 4 days of the week. So several different ways it can be utilized depending on what is important to the individuals within the various groups of the city.
Awesome. All right, next question. Do you have any users in the health sector currently applying IoT?
We do have users in the health sector. Several of the components can be looked at depending on what part of the health sector it's in, whether it's asset tracking for better understanding where key and expensive components or equipment happen to be, which ensuring that, say, for example, a defibrillator is put within a emergency room environment, a geofence is drawn around it, and alerts can be sent when that defibrillator is removed from the emergency room, therefore keeping it close by for heart rate or heart-based emergencies. So that can be moved all the way to the other aspect, which is just patient flow. And whenever people tend to be in a hospital environment, it tends to be stressful from a visitor or a patient standpoint. So navigation through a hospital is also key. White ceilings, white walls, white floors tend to be overwhelming for a lot of people, and helping them better navigate through the hospital to their desired appointment, to the desired physician's room, or to a consulting room, can really help the experience and remove a layer of stress that tends to come as part of a visit to a medical facility or hospital, which some people are already stressed when they get there. So just that extra element of how do I navigate through this smoothly will really help a lot of patients and visitors.
Great. Next question. What is the most strange use of IoT you've heard of?
Most strange. I'm gonna have to go with two different options there. We've used Bluetooth in a monitor the location of the SEALs as they move through the training element and track their location through the shoot house. Very interesting environment. Connect with other sensors to watch heart rate and just ensure that the precision of the team moving through that shoot house is adhered to, and help the team better improve their efficiencies over the course of time in a operational environment. So utilizing training with Bluetooth sensors through a Wi-Fi network to better understand how the teams are working with each other to move through the shoot house. It was a intriguing and strange environment. Never thought that would even come up on the radar. Another environment, partner of ours is working with a multi-use building facility where we have retail spaces, we have occupation dwelling units, and we have open spaces. And they are a pet-friendly environment, meaning pets are allowed in most all aspects and areas of the building structure, as well as the common grounds. The downside of that is some residents have allergies to various animals, cats, dogs, etc. So tagging with Bluetooth sensors, the cats and dogs of the residents of the building, allows the patrons that have allergies to them notice where the animals happen to be and this plan their route accordingly to avoid them if necessary. It also, if a animal goes missing, it allows the owner to better understand where their animal's at and quickly go retrieve it if it were to get out for some reason and end up in one of the common areas. So very interesting way for rentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And adjust their travel paths in accordance. Nope, Shannon, I appear to be talking over the top of you there.
Sorry, you had cut out just a bit. I didn't know if you had finished your statement or not. I apologize about that.
Oh, nope, I have now. I don't know where I cut out, but yes, just quick recap on that. Allows the users of the facility, the patrons and the residents, to improve their efficiency with moving, as well as their ability to not encounter animals if they don't want to. So pretty interesting concept.
Very. All right, we will close up the questions and move on to our closing. We'd like to thank you for attending this final webinar in our Why Where Matters series. If you'd like to view any of our other webinar episodes, we'll be sending a follow-up email sometime early next week with the webinar recording link from this current episode. And so you can go into that series link and watch any of the previously recorded episodes. And finally, just as a reminder, there'll be a few short survey questions that come up on the screen once I finish speaking. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to answer them. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day.